Adelante.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all the audience joining virtually from different parts of the globe. You are all welcome to this 28th session of the Second Congress of North American Studies. My name is Lautaro. I am the Executive Director of La Referencia, the Latin American Network of Open Science Repositories. I will be the moderator for this panel called North American Studies Gateway in the frame of Open Science International Cooperation. We will be giving context and presenting the creation of the North American Studies portal celebrated between CISAN and OpenAIRE. This portal will be managed by CISAN Institutional Repository, and it is an important outcome of this international cooperation within the framework of open science. So please let me give some short housekeeping notes. Each panelist will have 15 minutes. I will let you know 5 minutes before the time ends. The questions of the audience will be answered at the end of the session. Our first panelist will present the UNESCO recommendations on open science. She couldn't make it today, but sent a video that we will share with the audience. So let me introduce to Anna Persic. She is a program specialist at UNESCO in Paris and is the Science Policy and Partnership section at the Division of Science Policy and Capacity Building. Her role at UNESCO is to strengthen the science policy interface and promote science, technology, and innovation in the implemented on the United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development. She is a UNESCO focal point for science diplomacy and coordinates the UNESCO recommendation on open science and partnerships also in open science. Please, I kindly ask to Oscar if they can share the video of Anna. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for this invitation to UNESCO to present the latest development with the recommendation on open science. And hopefully, if you have any questions, I might be able to respond to them either through email or by correspondence with the co-organizers. So to start the presentation, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of why open science is something that is of importance for UNESCO. As you know, UNESCO is the United Nations agency in charge of education, science, culture, and communication. And of course, the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, as well as the Human Rights Declaration, is something that is absolutely at the core of the mandate of our organization. But we did realize that the 17 Sustainable Development Goals all require science. They all require science, technology, and innovation, but they also require science that is more efficient, that is more equitable, more transparent, more collaborative, and more inclusive. It really also requires science that is much more connected to societal needs and also that allows for collaborations across sectors, across disciplines, across continents, and across regions. In addition to that, as I said, we have the Article 27 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, which says that everyone has the right to freely share in scientific advancement and its benefits. And it is something that really is also extremely important if we do want to reach the full potential of science for the benefit of humanity. So open science as a concept and of course as practice does have the potential to make science more connected to societal needs and more accessible to all. It can also bridge the science, technology, innovation gaps that exist between and within countries. But to be able to do that, it really has to be done, this transformation from closed science to open science really has to be done in a fair and equitable way. What we've seen with the COVID crisis, for example, is really how important it is to have timely and free access to data, publications, and information. How important it is to have scientific collaborations across scales and sharing of information at all levels, and also how important it is to have a healthy science policy society dialogue. We've also seen that when there is will, there is action, and while today some 70% of all scientific publications are locked behind some kind of paywalls, meaning that they're not accessible for the readers to read, with the COVID-related publication, we actually have 85% of those publications that are free to read, that are in open access. So there really is a way of making science more accessible, starting from open access to scientific publications, if there is a movement towards such openness. But the success of COVID-19 related publications in terms of open access is something that really needs to be replicated across all the other disciplines, across all the other issues. If we just take a look at climate change, some 50% of publications related to climate change are still locked behind paywalls, so readers cannot access it. And that should not be accessible. Of course, climate change and all the other global issues are extremely important, and there needs to be access to this information also in timely manner and free of charge. So we did see within the last 20 years or so that the movement of open science, so the movement to make science more accessible, it was growing. It is growing a little bit everywhere in different regions of the world, Latin America, of course, some in North America, Europe, Africa, Asia. But until a few years ago, we didn't really have any international policy or action framework on open science. We did not have a common definition of what open science is, and we did not have any set of shared values and principles. So it was very important to mobilize the global community around open science and to make sure that they come up with a framework, international framework, that would recognize the importance of open science, but also set the guiding principles of what open science should be and how it should be done. And that is why UNESCO led the process, an international collaborative consultative process to determine this policy and action framework at the international level. And in 2021, in November 2021, the UNESCO General Conference, which brings together 193 member states, 193 governments, they all agreed on a common text, which is the text of the first international standard setting instrument on open science, the UNESCO recommendation on open science. So UNESCO recommendation, as I said, is a legal instrument. It's an international legal instrument. It's not legally binding for countries, but it really is a framework that determines the work of different countries in a specific area, and in this case, it's in the area of open science. The recommendation, as I said, is the first international normative instrument on open science. It contains an agreed definition of open science, and there is a lot of people who are involved in building consensus around this recommendation and around this definition. It spells out the consensus core values, guiding principles for open science. It also recognizes and addresses different actors and stakeholders of open science, recommends different actions, proposes innovative approaches for open science at different stages of the scientific cycle, and it also calls for a development of a comprehensive open science monitoring framework. So what is very important with open science as we move towards this new scientific system is that we are able to monitor what is important, and we are able to understand what are the impacts that we want to have from open science on different actors, of course, scientists, but also beyond the scientific community. So in terms of the definition of open science in the recommendation is very broad, and it really brings together all of the different movements that increase scientific collaborations and sharing of information for the benefits of science and society, that make multilingual scientific knowledge openly available, accessible, and reusable for everyone, and that opens the process of scientific knowledge creation, evaluation, and communication to societal actors beyond the traditional scientific community. So the idea is really to open up science within the scientific community, but also to open it with society more broadly. Another interesting part of the recommendation is that it really defines the key pillars of open science, and it goes beyond open access to scientific publication or open access to scientific data. So it has basically 4 big pillars: open scientific knowledge, open science infrastructures, open engagement with societal actors, and open dialogue with other knowledge systems. So within open scientific knowledge, we of course have open access to scientific publications, open research data, open educational resources, open source software and source code, and open hardware. So all of these different elements need to be considered when we talk about open science. In terms of infrastructures, we are talking about virtual and physical infrastructures, and I believe you will be hearing about that a little bit more during the conference today. Open engagement of societal actors is something that is very important within the recommendation, and this is the part where the open science gets opened towards society and builds bridges between science and society. So we are talking about citizen science, participatory or voluntary science. We are talking about scientific volunteering, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, any different ways of engaging other actors beyond scientific community in the process of science. And then open dialogue with other knowledge systems, including with local communities, indigenous peoples, and marginalized scholars. Of course, all of that is underlined by the need to communicate science in different ways through scientific publications, but also through other means of science communication. As I said, there are different values and principles which are defined in the recommendation, and I think all of them really go into really considering science as a global public good. So we talk about quality and integrity of science and the knowledge, but also collective benefit, equity, fairness, and diversity and inclusiveness. And these are some of the very important features of open science practices that really need to be taken into consideration with every open science activity that is being done. As I said, the recommendation also sets up some key objectives and areas of actions, and those range from the promotion of a common understanding of open science, enabling of a policy environment for open science, investing in infrastructures, but also in capacities, both human and institutional capacities, promoting cooperation, innovative approaches, and fostering a broader culture of open science and openness within the scientific system. All of these areas of action then have in the recommendation a series of recommended actions for governments, but also for other actors. We have really strived to now help the governments at this stage understand better what is in the recommendation and how they can better use the recommendation to improve their science systems and to improve the potential that science can have for delivering the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and development and other welfare for their populations. So we have been working together with different actors to provide some guidance for capacity building activities, for policies and how they should look like, how do we fund open science, how do we bolster open science infrastructures, but we've also worked on some checklists for universities, for publishers, for the different actors that are part of the open science ecosystems. And I really do encourage you to come and see our website, both to get access to the toolkit, but also to see what are the different actions on the international level where we really do still need and call upon actors from different parts of the world to be a part of a dialogue to understand what the biggest challenges and barriers are and what are some ways to address those challenges. What we have seen, before I close, just one thing, what we have seen is that there are several challenges, of course, to implement open science in an equitable way. The first one really is to look into the culture of science, the scientific culture more broadly, and the need to really communicate with scientists to start with, but then also with policymakers and with funders about the need for openness and open science. Of course, that needs to be accompanied also with incentives that would be in line with open science and not actually against open science practices. Funding, capacity building, monitoring. All of these are challenges that need to be overcome to be able to meaningfully implement open science in different regions and at different levels. So again, thank you very much for the invitation. I do really invite you to join our global actions on open science. We have an open call for best practices in open science, and we really do want to understand what different actors in different countries are doing so that we can share that with the global community. We also have the working groups on open science looking into policies, infrastructures, funding, and monitoring. So I would really encourage you to visit those the website and join these working groups. They are open. For the moment, we have some 400 experts from different countries, but we're always happy to have more people on board. So thank you very much one more time, and I wish you a very good rest of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to Anna for sharing this video and giving us this excellent context about the UNESCO recommendation. So now we are moving to the role of the institutional repositories, their operation and the guidance through the International Confederation of Open Access Repositories. Please let me introduce to Kathleen Shearer. She is the Executive Director of the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, COAR, an international association with members and partners from around the world representing libraries, universities, research institutions, government funders, and others. COAR brings together individual repositories and repository networks to build capacity, align policies and practices, and act as a global voice for the repository community. Kathleen has been working in open access, open science, scholarly communication, and research data management for over 15 years. She's also a research associate of the Canadian Association of Research Libraries, CARL. She's the author of various publications, most recently the paper Fostering the Bibliodiversity in Scholarly Communication, a Call for Action. So welcome, Kathleen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lautaro. Muchas gracias para la invitación. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes. I'm going to share my slides with you. So I'm hoping they're in full screen mode now.
Yes, they are.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to clarify one thing before I began my presentation, and that's the terminology science that we use when we talk about open science. And I think it's very important for people to understand and to emphasize that when we use the term science, it's being used in a very broad sense. So rather than the hard sciences, it's really being used as a way to talk about all of scholarship that's created through the scientific method, but through other types of scholarship as well. So when we talk about making science open, it's really making the results of research writ large openly available to the research community and beyond to the public. So very briefly, because Lautaro already introduced my organization, COAR is an international association. We were launched in 2009, and we grew out of a European project called the Driver Project, which was aiming to connect repositories at the European level. And of course, at the end of that project, the participants said, well, wait a minute, research is international, research is global. We really need to connect repositories around the world. There are no geographic boundaries that we should be setting around sharing information. So since then, we've grown from a small organization of about 30 original participants to over 150 members and partners. And we work at a number of levels, but in particular, trying to strengthen regional and national networks trying to introduce innovations into the repository space and general interoperability across repositories. So we don't want to have these silos of individual repositories. We want all the content in repositories to be able to be connected. So I think I don't have to emphasize this probably to anyone in this room, but scientific research is an enormous driver of human well-being. We all know and can point to many new discoveries over the last several years that have had a huge impact, positive impact on our societies, including most recently, shall we say, the mRNA vaccines, but nuclear fusion, the CRISPR technology, artificial intelligence, and so on. But I think what we're trying to achieve through this movement around open science is to support, really sharing of research at the international level. And we know how global research is, and we can see it when we look at the high-speed networks that connect research institutions from around the world. This is the map of GÉANT, which is the European high-speed network, but you can see that Europe is connected to every other region in the world. And the reason why they're connected is because they need to share information and data across continents. But the other aspect of research that I think is very important and often underlooked is the fact that research is also very local. There are a lot of problems, local problems, that are very important that we need to spend our resources and energy on in terms of scholarship and research. And we can see that there are, if you look at the directory of open access journals, there are many, many, many local journals in a landscape that have come about to support the sharing of local information and local research as well. So I think what we really want to try to do in the context of open science and in the context of optimizing research communications is to create a system that can balance this appropriately. Global sharing, but also supporting local research and local needs. And at the moment, I think I will speak briefly about how the current system does not really support that very well. And in particular, there's quite a bit of inequality in research communications when you look at the global south and sharing information at from developing countries. Another very important aspect of this, because when we talk about open science, it's just not about sharing research with other researchers, it's about getting knowledge into society. And the Helsinki Initiative on Multilingualism talks about how the disqualification of local and national languages in academic publishing, as it is now, is probably the most important factor that prevents societies from using and taking advantage of research where it is done. So I think what we really want to have is this very open ecosystem that's universal. Everyone can participate. It's quality controlled. And it enables the sharing of research outputs, all types of research outputs beyond the research papers. It enables early sharing of preprints, so we don't have to wait the long lag times from submission to publication. That research infrastructure is considered public infrastructure and it's not controlled by private companies. That we have a very distributed system, but interoperable so that we can support those local needs, but also international sharing. That content is open and not closed through licenses or closed collections. And that we can really utilize the potential of the open web. So the question really is, how do we get from where we are now, which is a predominantly pay-to-access, pay-to-publish scholarly publishing system, to one that is universal, open, and quality controlled? And I think the elephant in the room, I was at the United Nations Open Science meeting last week, and this was discussed over and over again, that really the most important thing that is stopping us from moving towards a new system is the incentive, research evaluation systems. And I'll just give you one example of university rankings. So our evaluation systems, including the university rankings, are highly based on publication outputs that are reflected in the indexing databases that are owned by commercial companies. And so what this basically does is it incentivizes and basically forces researchers in every country in the world to publish in international journals, not to publish in local journals, not to deposit their data in repositories, not to share their preprints, but to publish. There's a singular focus on publishing in these 24,000 academic journals that are indexed by Elsevier and Scopus or Web of Science. And so if we really want to create this very open system, the first thing we have to do is change this research evaluation systems that are based on this. And just to give you an example of how many publications are missing from these indexing databases, you can look at the directory of open access journals, which has over 7,500 journals in it, as compared to Scopus, which only has 2,350 journals. And a recent study that was led in Europe around Diamond Open Access found even more journals beyond the journals that are available through the directory of open access journals. So really what's happening is that the research that's published in these journals that are not in the major databases ends up being invisible for research evaluation systems. And so again, this drives researchers to publish in these prestige international journals that are mainly published in English. So I think this is really the crux of the problem. And of course, Latin America, there have been a number of infrastructures and players in Latin America that have been very vocal about this and the transition towards open access and open science. So the proposed transition towards open access by the commercial sector is, well, we won't charge you for a subscription, but we'll charge you to pay to publish in a journal. So you can pay us 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Now Nature Journal is 9,000 euros, I believe, to publish an article. And of course, this will not work in developing countries. It certainly won't work in Latin America. And so to be able to create a global system that's inclusive and works around the world, we really need to think about alternatives to these transformative agreements, which are really moving from subscriptions to article processing charges or pay to publish charges. Again, when we think about equality, we can see this kind of inequality reflected in many different aspects of our research ecosystem, including how the COVID-19 vaccines were distributed. It sort of reflects exactly what's happening in the scholarly communication systems. This is a slide that came from our last annual meeting that we had in Madrid 7 or 8 months ago. And Bjorn Brems is a neurobiologist, and he started his keynote by saying, this is what we want. We don't want to have this system that's just based on research outputs published in international journals. We really want to have this system of interoperable digital research objects, data, code, articles, preprints, pre-registration, and all of this needs to be quality controlled and in a very distributed ecosystem to support the needs of different domains and different countries. and different types of data. And so COAR has been working essentially through our individual members, but also through national and regional partners to really try to advance this vision that's provided through Bjorn and many others. And that is to connect up an interoperable global network of repositories around the world that will be available to all researchers, both to deposit their research outputs and to have access to others' research as well. And we recently launched a new project called the Notify Project, where we're developing new technology that will really allow us to link directly from one resource in a repository to another. Right now, we depend on harvesting of research of metadata in repositories and full text into an aggregation, and we'll hear more about that later by some of our presenters. But this project is about using linked data notifications to connect content in a repository with related content somewhere else. So I think in conclusion, if we want to transform scholarly communication, we really need to do four things. We need to reform the current incentive system that's now focused on publishing in international journals. We need to adopt policies that require sharing of all research outputs. We need to build and host local public infrastructures with global interoperability. And we need to move some of that funding around because the big publishers are making actually billions of profits, billions of dollars of profits each year. So there's quite a bit of money in the system, but it needs to be moved and directed towards what our social priorities are. And so with that, I would like to say that the UNESCO recommendation on open science has been very helpful in terms of raising awareness with governments around the world about this important issue, and also around the issue of equity and bibliodiversity. So it's been very helpful to have UNESCO create this framework that we can use when we're communicating with governments. And I will end my presentation there. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Kathleen, for this excellent landscape of the core actions and the challenge that we are facing in the open science community. So now we will move to talk about the OpenAIRE and the value-added services that are the base for the project that we are presenting today. So I would like to introduce to Natalia Manola. She's the CEO of the OpenAIRE, the European Infrastructure for Scholarly Communication and Open Science. She's also a research associate of the Athena Research and Innovation Center in the University in Athens. She holds a physics degree for the University of Athens and a master in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. She has an expertise in open science policies and implementation, having served in the EOS Executive Board and the Open Science Policy and High-Level Advisory Group to provide advice about the development and implementation of open science policy in Europe. Welcome, Natalia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lautaro, and thank you, the colleagues, for the invitation. It's really nice to see all of us together, from all the continents, or many continents. And I have been, Kathleen, I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much. So what I will present, I will give another twist to my presentation, or to what I'm presenting. So I will present OpenAIRE, the things that we are doing in Europe, and how we are trying to advance some of the implementations around open science. Working with UNESCO, working with many of the bodies like COAR, who are doing, we're trying to align on the policy level. And I will just say, the few things that we do. First of all, I will not go again about open science because Anna did go through this. But what is important to say here is that as we are transitioning to open science, the institutions And all organizations, founder or institutions, we need to think about new functionals and organizational schemes, whether that means new people in our, in the libraries, in our research data centers, supporting, legal personnel. This is, the flows are changing, and we need to think about that. So this is the main point that I would like to say here. Then, just to give you an overview of Europe and where we are heading. As you can see, is that in Europe, I think we have been lucky to be a front runner in open science, in open access. I will not go through this slide, but what I'm saying is that through the European Commission, from 2007 until 2021, it has made huge steps with all these initiatives, from open access to publication, then open data, fair data, European Open Science Cloud, Horizon Europe, where every program needs to report in open science, fair data. And now that we're moving to this COAR, which is the Coalition of Advancing Research Assessment, it's a new body facilitated by the European Commission, Science Europe, and the European University Association that is going to be investigating things around how we can support this research assessment and the reforms, and where does open science, so it's a more holistic approach, but where does open science fit? So this is where we are in Europe. Let me see. I'm trying to change my slide and it doesn't. Okay, now just a few facts and truths as I see. So first of all, open science is here to stay. And this is proved by the UNESCO effort in the last 2 years, with awareness that it brought, and now that it's a supporting tool with a toolkit on how to implement it. Then we need to realize that open science doesn't have one face, it has many faces, and sometimes it's like a monster, you don't know where to tackle it from, and it gets confusing. But I think we need to target on what we need to do, and then that we need to realize that open science, is not, it's we are freeing up for the free point of use for the researchers and the other actors, but we need to invest on it. And the question here is how to best invest, how to best put our investment where we're going to have the best impact. And the other key challenge here is how to align our investments on a global scale. This is, one of the big challenges. Then the institutions come into the center. So it's crucially important to make open science happen. And then the other thing that we need to realize is that open science requires a holistic approach. We can't really look at open access to publications without looking that this publication can be linked to some data sets, to some software, to the provenance, all of this. And then as Kathleen said, is how the assessment enters into the picture. So unless we do this holistic approach, then we're not going to go very, very long. And then this putting the researcher in the middle, which is the holy grail, because as we are designing our systems, then the researcher is there. But I think we're somehow missing to see how can we make it easy for them. But also what we are missing is how to engage all the other actors in the research ecosystem. That means, from the university executives, from the libraries, from the research centers, from the funders, everyone into the system. And what is important to do is to see that they align, because there are many ways to do open science and open access. There's not one way for one country. Every country can choose their own way, but as long as we align and we work together. Now, the other thing that is of interest here, and I would say how we're building this, is that everything is digital, it's big, and it's connected. So research is big, digital, and connected. And if you look at what we have designed here, which is the research life cycle or parts of the research life cycle, then a researcher or an actor is, when you're planning a research, you need to discover it. And then when you discover and then you gather all this collection of, you're doing a desk research for past publications or grants or data that you need to process. And then you need to publish, archive, and assess. And all of these are somehow interconnected. They're not just interconnected as results, but they're connected as actors, as roles, and as processes. And this is what makes it complicated, because this is what I said before. It's the multifaceted. And the last thing before I go into OpenAIRE is we heard about going from a closed traditional scholarly communication to an open scholarly communication system. And what does this mean? It has different connotations for different people. And this is sometimes hard to grasp. It depends on who you talk to. But the two questions that rise is, how do we transition to an open ecosystem that will support this diversity, equity, and inclusion? Kathleen provided, and UNESCO Anna provided, some ideas, but this is what we need to do. But it's not clear yet, how we can cover and what is the infrastructure that we will cover all of these. And then the other that is especially, even for publication, is the ownership. Who owns and controls the processes, the results, and what is the cost? So these are all the three questions that we need to respond to. So now I'm coming to OpenAIRE. So this was my a bit of preamble, and I will go fast now. So OpenAIRE is a non-profit organization. We started as a project, it was a European project. There's a series of European projects in 2008. And 10 years after, we became an organization. And with 30 members, 50 members in 34 countries, we have a virtual office with 15 staff members, plus many of our members, they put their either in-kind contribution, or we collaborate in European projects. And what we have tried to build, and I think, this is one of the success stories of OpenAIRE, is that we bring together the human capital and advanced ICT services. So we have this network that I will explain, and it's about also supporting them and promoting their work, and they promote their work through these ICT services, the infrastructure. So how do we, how do we work? We have three pillars of action: services, policies, and training. And I will go a bit, in some of these. And then the three levels of operations is, we have, our focus is on Europe. So we have the national, as I will explain, the network and the policies, but then we work at the global level. And for example, COAR has been an invaluable partner. Also La Referencia, our work, and and sometimes even though organically we work together, we have to step back and see how can we align our strategies and how can we align our action points. And this is one of the things I think what is missing in the global scholarly communication to succeed is commitment to go together. We are going together, but sometimes, because there are different priorities all over the place, we tend to forget that. So number one, the OpenAIRE network. So it's about connecting people and learning from each other, because Europe, we have so many countries, and each country has its own peculiarities, own characteristics, different ministries, different policies, different maturity of infrastructure. So what we have from day one, we have these national open access desks, which is a European network that addresses all of the issues that I mentioned. So each of these experts in one per country, they can coordinate, align, support, promote whatever you can think about on policies, infrastructure, research data management, legal issues. They do training. So they are all over the place with open science, not just open access, but open science. And of course, as I said, we have the global links to COAR and RDA. What are the activities? I'm not going to go through them, but this is a role that is demanding. We thought that when open science, now with the European open science, would be more streamlined, that it would be easier. But no, it's not, because now more players are in the game, and what we are trying to do is to converge and align, the different priorities of the different organizations that already we see happening in every country. So what this network is here is to support each other, to support others, and this is an invaluable. It has served as an invaluable branch of OpenAIRE. Now the services. So as I said, the services, we believe it's not just for researchers, because in the R&I, research and innovation ecosystem, there are many other players and actors. So in a nutshell, what the OpenAIRE services are about is about, first of all, is about publishing, how you can publish information, how you can track, discover, and monitor. So these are, in a nutshell, what we're doing. Starting with, because we started and we continue on interoperability, we have these guidelines for content providers, because for us content providers, we started off by a repository network, but we understand that there is a rich network of open access journals, Diamond Open Access now in Europe. There is a connected network of data repositories. Then at least in Europe, we see the software heritage and software repositories. Software is starting to become one of the first primary citizen in research. And then of course we have the quiz systems, we have the usage. So what do? We have these, what we call interoperability guidelines. And as you can see is that we don't just, OpenAIRE doesn't make them. We work with others, because this is we work with others on the global scale in order to see how we can all align and we can use something that the community will see useful. Then the range of services. So we have a range of services that we cover. This all is in red. It's not all. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay, it's not all, but it's a lot of the research life cycle. So we got this, from publish, assess, outreach, manage data, interoperability, support, and train and discover. And then we have services that somehow they fit in this area. I'm not going to go over this, but these are, the services. And what we find also, it's not just about having the services, but how can you market the services to the community? Because the community is bombarded by professional marketing services. So how can we make them attractive to them? Coming from the support, from the help desk, from the tutorials, from the training, everything around the service. This is what we have found is becoming very crucial. And then in all of these services, in the middle is our key asset, which is the OpenAIRE graph. So the OpenAIRE graph, imagine it is a comprehensive, you can read it about it, is an open data set of research information. So it's meta research. It's about connecting publications to data set objects, to software, from resources to grants to organizations to people, authors. And now we are expanding to services, citations in it. So what we want to do is we want to have a comprehensive scholarly communication graph where it can be served, it can serve for discovery, for tracking, and for monitor. And monitor not in the sense of policing, but monitor in order for institutions, for example, to see where do they stand in open science and how can they get better. So it's a policy making tool. It's based on open science principles, so everything is open, everything is transparent, well documented, and it has a high relevance to the research community. Why? Because we consult with, in Europe, we have these research infrastructures, we have 40 something of them in specific domains, and we consult with them in order to try to make it relevant. I will not go about it. So this is, something how we go about building it. But this is, from combining sources. Then we have a big data AI-driven infrastructure to extract information, and then we have a community and developing a community also to develop indicators and validate the data. So, as I said in the beginning, the key thing here is how to have a connected suite of services, and this is what we're trying to do. Just to present you is, in the beginning, we have these data sources that we do not, OpenAIRE does not own. We support them, we promote interoperability through the guidelines. And then what we ask them to do is to register and we validate their metadata. We consult with them how to make it better. Also the usage data. So it's a matter of compliance. It's a thing. How can we support the infrastructure out there to become better? Then all this comes into the OpenAIRE Research Graph, which is a catalog. At the same time, we have a few services. I think you all know Zenodo, but we have Argos, which is a data management plan. We have Amnesia, which is an anonymization service. And we work with CNRS in France, which is to promote Episciences, which is an overlay journal on top of repositories. So we get all of this information in, and then we have all these value-added services, which could be something like Explore. So it's Explore. You can explore in a search engine for the whole graph, or you can have it for a particular country, like what we have done with Canada. We do have Connect, so Alessia will present what we're doing. And now what we are actually moving in with some new funding from the European Commission, we are starting to think about how can we use this data to construct the open science profile of an institution, of a researcher, of a funder, in order for them to use it, to be used in assessment. And of course, this profile will include some numbers, but will also include practices. So we are, this project just started. Hopefully in 2 years, we're going to have these results. But this open science profile will be the basis for people to use and assess and write their courses in the future. And training, and I'm almost done. So our training is very important for us because we have this network that they have. They're reaching out to every country and speaking their own language. So language is an issue. Speaking in a way that local researchers understand them, that local funders understand them. So what we have is this network, and then we collaboratively have started to develop open courses for open science, with our focus now here on the quality and the adaptation of what is happening around in the adoption. We have training for OpenAIRE services, so now we are very busy in developing training and tutorials for our services. And then our target also is to have training, how to support the trainers, because we are a small organization. So how can we support the trainers? So we have these training boot camps for training. We have a community of practice for trainers, and those two are both global. And last but not least, we have the help desk where people can put questions, and we direct it to the appropriate country, and they can respond back. I would like to close that to say that one of the key things that is helping us now is shaping our roadmap is our strategy. For the first time, as I told you, we have been operating on 10 years on projects. And now in the past 4 years, we are a nonprofit organization. So now we have our strategy. I would like you to read it. This is, I would invite you to read it. And this strategy is very important for us because for the first time, our members, sat and thought about what are the issues that OpenAIRE can tackle or want to tackle, because we cannot tackle everything around open science. So of course, our first priority is the infrastructure for open scholarly communication. The second one is data and service quality assurance. So we gather all this information. We know that repositories need help. So how can we intervene at the quality? So how can we support them to increase the quality? Then, of course, it's the responsible research and careers assessment that includes open science. Where can our members support the national initiatives on that, and where does our data come in handy? Then it's innovation in research, communication, and dissemination. We really like to see projects that, like the one that Kathleen and COAR are doing, like Notify project. We want to see more innovation in scholarly communication and research communication, and I think we're missing that. So we are trying to find ways on how to promote that. And of course, it's about monitoring uptake of open science policies. Again, we have a very detailed action plan. We invite you to read it, but this is our way of thinking for the next years. And with this, I'm finishing my presentation.
Thank you very, very much, Natalia, for this very interesting presentation from the other OpenAIRE is doing and is planning to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we are moving now to talk about the project. So let me introduce to Alessia Bardi. She is a researcher in computer science at the Institute of Information Science and Technology of the Italian National Research Council with a PhD in information engineering. She has been involved in several European community-funded projects for the realization and operation of aggregative data infrastructures for research communities in the humanities and studies of the past, Ariadne Plus. She's also participated in initiatives in support of open access and open science, like IOSC and OpenAIRE. She is a product manager of the OpenAIRE Connect in the OpenAIRE service that offers customizable discovery portals for research communities. So welcome, Alessia, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lautaro, for the presentation. So let me share my screen. And now it should be in full screen, right? Okay, so with this presentation, I would like to describe the collaboration that we had together with Norma for the creation of the North American Studies Gateway, which has been created thanks to the OpenAIRE Connect service. So why the Connect service? Because by building the OpenAIRE research graph and building thousands and thousands of scholarly communication data sources, which are trusted by scientists and that provide information, but it's a lot. So researchers and organizations are somehow getting lost in this amount of data. So we need to find a way to make it easier for them to discover what it's really relevant for them. But also research communities, organizations, not only need tools to find their own thing, but they also need tools that help them to assess what they're doing, and also portals that help them to disseminate what they are doing. So not keeping all their effort internally, but on the contrary, they need to, show to the public, to the citizens also, what they are doing to improve the research. Clearly, there are some challenges to be addressed. The first one, of course, is the publication deluge, as I was saying, but also the heterogeneity, because especially in research communities of a specific domain, they can find relevant research outputs in different thematic repositories or thematic journals, and all these different sources expose the content in different way. So we need a system, guidelines, and technology in order to address these kind of interoperability challenges. Data is also often not complete. So, and when it is not complete, it's difficult to build complete statistics on top of it, or provide a comprehensive view of what our research community is doing. And finally, we have the problems about the quality and accuracy. So in some cases, the metadata that describes our research output is high quality and provides a lot of details. In other cases, this is not. So we need somehow smart processes, or let's say, smart processes that are able to infer, to deduce information, both from the metadata that is available, but also from the full text when it is available, and also from the links that exist between the different outputs of research. So this clearly has costs. It requires time. It requires expertise, and not all research communities can afford to do that from scratch. And this is where OpenAIRE Connect comes in. Because with Connect, basically what we do is that we take the OpenAIRE graph that Natalia described before, and we are able to identify from the graph which are the research outputs, the projects, the scholarly communication sources that are relevant for a specific community. So what happens is that we are able to identify the subset and give the community a customized view of the OpenAIRE research graph, which is made searchable and browsable via portal, which can be completely configured according to the community. The portal clearly is integrated with other services, both OpenAIRE services like Zenodo, usage counts, and the Explore service, but also other services for open science, like, for example, ORCID for the authors, and also the AAI, so the authentication and authorization infrastructure, so that you can have basically a seamless, a single sign-on. A gateway can also facilitate the implementation of open science practices. In fact, it provides functionalities for linking research outputs with each other, services for finding repositories where that researchers can use to publish any types of research outputs in an open way. And a very important thing for the community, I think, is that the service is created on demand, and it's operated by OpenAIRE. So the IT support of the service is performed by OpenAIRE, and the data is updated regularly according to the timeline of the OpenAIRE graph. And the community curator, let's say the gateway manager, do not need to worry about the content update, but they just need to ensure that the configuration of the gateway is up to date. This is because basically what we do is that we give the administrators a dashboard that they can use to configure the gateway in terms of look and feel, and also in terms of the inclusion criteria. So the criteria by which we can identify products, outputs that are relevant for the research community. We apply these criteria on the OpenAIRE graph, and the results are made available via the gateway. They are made available via API that can be used to build additional services on top of the content. And we also publish the metadata that we identified for the community on Zenodo. So this is in general what we do with Connect, but specifically with the CISAN. This is the timeline, let's say, of our collaboration. So we started in June 2021. Norma found the Connect service on our catalog, and she started the communication with us. She participated to one of the community calls that I organize every 3-4 months in order to engage with the community managers that we already have, but also to promote the service among the others. And finally, after some legal details that we needed to set up, we could sign a memorandum of understanding and officially start the collaboration, which also involves clearly also COAR and La Referencia. Since August of last year, there is the gateway available, and Norma is configuring it. And in fact, the configuration is an iterative process. So we are continuously improving how the gateway is configured in such a way that we, let's say, increase the coverage of the research outputs, and we decrease the false positives of the content that you can find. So there are some challenges at identifying the content that is very relevant for North Americanist and North American studies. So you can already access the portal. Know that it's a work in progress, so you should consider it as a beta version, because as I said, we are still fine-tuning the configuration. But you can access at the URL that you can see in this slide, so northamericanstudies.openaire.eu. And I would like to show it live, if I can, and okay. So you should be seeing my browser now. So this is the homepage of the gateway, where you have an overview of the different types of research products that we could identify so far. And as you can see, you have an easy access to all the different functionality of the gateway. So starting from the search in the homepage, but also the deposit, which allows a user to find a repository that is OpenAIRE compliant, or the user can select also Zenodo in case there is no, let's say, repository that he can use. Then we have the link functionality that allows user to create connections between the objects, but also to help grow the record of the community by saying that this product is missing from the gateway, please add it. So this is something that is possible, and basically we can search for research products. I will do a very naive search here just to show you the functionality. So for example, the search is performed in OpenAIRE, in Crossref, in DataSite, but also ORCID. And you can basically select the different products and decide to link it to a project, to another research product, or for example, to a research community. And I'm sorry, I have to log in again. Okay, so I can decide to link it to a research community. And in this case, I would like to link it with Mesa. Now, I'm not going to finish the process because I picked some publications by chance. So just to give you a glimpse of what we have done with Norma, and then I will leave the word to her. As a curator, you have access to the administration dashboard here, where you can basically specify the different criteria. So for example, you can list the projects that are relevant for the community. In this case, projects that are about, for example, migration or the Mexico borders and so on. So all the topics that are relevant for the studies on North America. We have data sources, which includes both institutional repositories like the one of CISAN, but also journals. And then subjects. So here Norma made an amazing work by identifying exactly the subjects that are relevant. And this part will be improved a lot in the next months, because thanks to Norma, we realized that we needed a new functionality. So we will be able to basically add advanced criteria. So we can say that, for example, we want to have all the publications or the data sets which have North America as a subject and belong to the fields of science, of social science and humanities. So I would like to thank Norma also for this and for helping us at improving our service and making more useful for the community. And I think this ends my presentation.
Thank you very much for your presentation and explanation of the service, Alessia. So finally, in the other side of this collaboration, let me introduce to Norma. Norma Aída Manzanera Silva. She studied political science and public administration at the UNAM's Faculty of Political and Social Sciences. She has a master's in library science from El Colegio de Mexico and took the Introduction to Museum Studies course at Harvard. She has served as a sub-director of the library of the Pan American University and as the director of the library at Mexico's National Museum of Art. She has led CISAN, the institutional repository of the UNAM's Research Center of North America. So welcome, Norma, the floor is yours.
Good morning, America. Good afternoon, Europe, and hello, everybody. As the academic coordinator of this panel, it is an honor to be here with my dear colleagues, Europe, Canada, and Latin America. I am grateful for their presence, and I would like to express my appreciation to the executive of La Referencia for moderating this panel. Today, I want to talk about the North American Studies Gateway, an exciting project characterized by the way scholars, teachers, students, policymakers, journalists, and anyone interested in North America access research outlets. Before we enter the specifics of the Gateway, let me give you some background on who we are and what we do. Well, Alessia just talked about the specifics before me. And let me introduce ourselves. The Center for Research on North America, CISAN, is a multi- and interdisciplinary research unit of the National Autonomous University of Mexico, better known in Spanish as UNAM. Our mission is to study the interaction between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and their influence in other regions. Since its creation, we have established a vision to promote and lead the networks of North Americanists worldwide. 2 years ago, we created REDAN, the Network for North Americanists, and the first version of the Congress was held. The center, in 2018, CISAN developed CISAN, an institutional repository containing CISAN's publications in digital collections, books, notebooks, the journal Norteamerica, Revista Académica, and the magazine Voices of Mexico, as well as CISAN's history collection. These collections make up CISAN's institutional memory. Initially, we defined the repository as a platform. However, we have shifted our focus to providing services and building a community. Today, CISAN is part of the UNAM aggregator, the National Repository and Remedy. With international protocols, guidelines, vocabularies, and standards, our repository has pioneered automatic intercommunication with European infrastructures, including PACE, COAR, and OpenAIRE, the world's most robust consultation sources for academic products. This indexing has given immediate benefits by increasing visibility and expanding our audience. However, our possibilities for collaboration expand our horizons. That's why we were thrilled to announce a new partnership between CISAN and OpenAIRE. This partnership will enhance the integration, organization, and dissemination of those open academic records related to the topics for the study of North America gathered from different latitudes. This collaboration aims to strengthen the integration and automated intercommunication between digital platforms and facilitate communication among the members of REDAN. The Gateway is a space for building a community of researchers and enthusiasts of the study of this region. Moreover, the North American Studies Gateway connects a broader trends in open science and open access. As we heard last week at the third United Nations Conference on Open Sciences, there is a growing recognition of the need to promote open access to scholarly research. The Gateway contributes to this effort by providing easy access to validated information about North America and by fostering collaboration among researchers. We also noticed the advancement of policies was recognized at the declarative level. On the other hand, the need to face challenges in the implementation stage was mentioned. In addition, it was said that the strengths of our ecosystem are solidarity, collaboration, and inclusion in a respectful, proactive, and equitable environment. This is exactly the context and framework in which our project is developed. In conclusion, the North American Studies Gateway is an exciting project transforming how we access and disseminate validated information about North America. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Norma, for your presentation. Well, I think that we are ready for questions for the audience. So I don't know if we have questions. I am seeing the chat. I don't see questions in the chat. Maybe if someone wants to ask a question live, can raise hands and we can give them the opportunity to ask directly to our panelists. Do we have any question of the audience? Even we can translate if you like, because we know that we don't have online translation, so maybe we can translate if someone wants to do a question in Spanish, we can translate the question for the panelists. Norma, someone wants to add something?
Well, I try to take advantage of this space because I'm very excited and grateful with my colleagues in Europe. And this is for us and for you too, for my colleague in Latin America, to be here with the giants in open science is enormously unbelievable. And I told that we use the standards, everything in the international frame that open the gates for us to be here, to CISAN, be in this vibrant movement. And that's it. I'm very grateful, and I work very nice with Alessia, that is my colleague, and we struggle several, we have some problems, but we face a light near. And we have just 3 months to finish, or more or less, to finish our project. So we are in a hurry. But this is very nice, and I would like to encourage to ask questions to our panelists. Please, por favor, hagan sus preguntas si desean, aprovechen la presencia de Natalia Manola. Ella viene de OpenAIRE, que es no solo quien dicta las políticas de ciencia abierta en Europa, sino que también tienen una infraestructura increíble y han sido muy generosos en compartir con nosotros todo esto. A pesar de que somos pequeñitos como el ratoncito, ahí estamos. So this is what I want to say. We have a raised
question.
Hand. Okay.
Yes. Julio.
Hola, buenos días.
Hola, Julio.
Bueno, yo estoy muy agradecido. Voy a hablar un poco más bien en español porque es mejor mi español que mi inglés. Y entonces quiero también agradecer el esfuerzo de Norma y todas las panelistas. Y entonces, más que pregunta, si me ayudan también a traducir ahí a las colegas. ¿Qué pregunta? Yo quisiera como generar una inquietud. No sé si se está traduciendo. Para que vaya yo a tiempo y
I will translate. He wants to say thank you and ask or more than a question. This is like a suggestion or so go on.
Okay, thank you. Entonces yo quisiera más bien generar una inquietud porque fue muy interesante lo que UNESCO está proponiendo a través de los instrumentos de colaboración, y entonces más que pregunta quisiera ir hacia donde los gobiernos están articulando estos instrumentos, a través de quiénes, y si las instituciones, las universidades como nosotros, podríamos instrumentar sin que los gobiernos lo hagan. ¿Cómo enfrentar esta problemática que tal vez no se están tomando todas estas recomendaciones desde el gobierno, y si las instituciones podrían o lograríamos tomar estas propuestas y generar un efecto hacia arriba? Más bien es así como mi inquietud de que si podría funcionar desde abajo hacia arriba y como integrar estos esfuerzos. Esto sería.
Okay, I will try to translate your question. So Julio is saying that he wants to know what the governments are doing around the UNESCO recommendation and what the institutions could do to move forward in this if the governments don't lead the way in the UNESCO recommendation implementation. So he wants to know if they push and work from the institution, if they could make the change possible from the button to the app and move the governments to do that. That's more or less that I understood, Julio. I don't know if, but I don't know who wants to take the challenge of to respond this.
Yeah, yo puedo responder un poquito. Esa recomendación es un nivel alto. It's very high level. Entonces, no es obvio necesariamente cómo podemos aplicar las recomendaciones en práctica. So how do we move from a very high level, almost principles, which is what the recommendation is, to it putting them into practice is the gap, I think, that we have right now. And I think there are a number of organizations luchando to see how they could apply the recommendation at the institutional level or across different stakeholder communities. And so I think in the next year, we will be having more practical recommendations in terms of what we can do to advance, even if our governments are not taking up the recommendations. Because again, it's very easy to say in a way, okay, we support the recommendations, but the question is how to apply the recommendations on the ground. But I do think there will be some more practical recommendations coming soon that can be used by institutions, by repositories, by libraries. So in different stakeholder communities can look directly at what we could do to support moving forward.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Yes,
of course, Natalia. Yeah.
I think, that the example has shown, at least in Europe that I know of, is that institutions started having repositories, they started having open science, open access journals without any recommendations from UNESCO, without any recommendations from the countries. We had, people, especially in libraries, and now what we see is that these people and the staff is not only in the libraries, but they are in other departments, and visionary people who started setting up infrastructure, and we started setting up the processes and the structures in order to promote open science in their institution, without any top-down requirements. Just to get you an idea, is that Europe, only in the last 2 or 3 years, we have started to have open science policies in the countries. Only Horizon Europe and the FP7 projects, only the EC as a funder had these policies, no one else. But we had the people who brought this forward.
Yes, Norma.
Yo quisiera agregar algo, ¿sí? I would like to add something. We have problems, in Mexico, we have problems with implementation as a level of national policy. Our repository was funding with support of the government, but since there, we have some how do you say, we are not facing advance at the level of implementation, but this is not something that make us to wait. And if you allow me, this is an example of how we can make collaboration with other huge, like COAR and OpenAIRE, institutions or organizations that are in the same boat, that accept us all in the same boat. And I really appreciate Natalia, the holistic, she talked about the holistic way and the win-to-win. We are cooperating with OpenAIRE because of as aggregator, and they are give us, I think is that, they are give us something in a schema to win-to-win. So thank you very much. And you don't have to wait to implementation. We have to work together and go as fast as possible. Not to
Exactly.
say,
So
thank you.
Norma is one of the persons that I was referring to, you know, that we've seen all over Europe. And Norma is one of them.
It's the institution, it's me, CISAN, with the support of CISAN authorities that I'm grateful also. And with this Bredan organization to researchers interested in North American studies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If you allow me to say something about it, I agree with Natalia, and we are working from many years in from the institutions, of course, but also in La Referencia, we have the governments on board. So as part of our working plan for these years and the years to come, we have put in the plan to work together with the governments in order to choose one or two or at least some of the UNESCO recommendation and work together in order to to make concrete actions in order to fulfill the UNESCO recommendation. So we will be working in this, as Kathleen said, in the next years. I hope that we will success at that, but it's really hard to make it concrete. So we have another question, another raised hand from Mayaruel. I don't, no sé si nos escuchas.
Sí, ¿ustedes me escuchan?
Sí, adelante.
Perfecto. Hello, my name is Mayaruel Torres. I am a student of the Faculty of Science, Political Science in UNAM. I am in the master, and my topic of thesis is about participatory mechanisms in outer space. I'm sorry, with citizen science. And citizen science is in the UNESCO recommendations. And my question is, what is the perception of the advancements of the open science in Latin America? Because this is a new topic in my university, and it's a new topic in some areas, and it's so difficult to find information about.
Someone wants to answer, sorry, about that? About the,
it's an open question. Yes, it's about the appreciation of the advancement. Yo quisiera saber cuál es el avance en América Latina de la ciencia abierta y sobre todo, bueno, desde mi punto de vista, la ciencia ciudadana sí puede construir de abajo hacia arriba la ciencia abierta, sobre todo en espacios de participación ciudadana como son las plataformas de Suniver, CISAN y otras. Puede ayudar.
Okay. You asked about Latin America, but maybe somehow our panelists could share what they are doing in Europe and other parts of the world around citizen science. Someone has something? Yes, Natalia, please.
Yes, so there is a lot happening in Europe in citizen science. Actually, there is an association. If you can send me an email, I can send you all the information about this association of citizen science groups or something. So in many countries, these take place organically. So they are close to the local community. And the case is that they are supported by the libraries, national libraries also, not all public libraries. They are supported by some universities, and they are or some NGOs, so non-governmental organizations. What is going on is that we are trying to support. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that interruption. So there is a lot of support on how that they can make citizen science and how to support these groups. At this moment in time, there is not a lot of connection with open science. So citizen science is considered part of open science. So a researcher is getting credits for working for citizen science, but they're not using the infrastructure. So they're not, gathering data. They are not publishing data, and this is a process that is still missing. But if you want, you can send me an email and I can send you some information and links on what is happening in Europe.
Great. Thank you, Natalia. I must say that in Latin America, maybe citizen science is the less developed branch of or component of the open science umbrella. So, but we are starting to see some initiatives and some in the different countries. So, but again, I think that we need to look at what is happening in other parts of the world and trying to learn how, as we did with other components of the open science. So if we have no more questions, we can try to wrap up and finish the meeting. Do you agree, Norma?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Lautaro. Thank you very much, everybody, and our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. So I think that just to final words, I think that this project is an excellent example of the international collaboration, and this portal will be a source of content for actors from different parts of the world, and hopefully it's the first of more to come. We need to work very hard together if we want to follow the UNESCO recommendations, and I think that we all agree that the international collaboration is the way to do it. So thank you very much for all to participating in this, and all the panelists, the audience, and the organizer for this opportunity. Thank you very much all.